Hey everyone, Matt here from Doctors of Running. Today we're going to do a review of the Inov-8, gosh, the longest name shoe, Inov-8 Trail G300 Max. Got to make sure I get the full name right. So this is Inov-8's extremely long distance, max cushion, ultra marathon racing shoe, training shoe. Very different from my experience with Inov-8 stuff. They were nice enough to send this along to us. I really didn't know what to expect because the last time I tried to Inov-8 was actually in college, back when the Rodex 233 and stuff like that was coming out. Those were great shoes. I really love those. So my experience with them was much more minimal. So to have this come out was like, whoa, this is not what I would expect Inov-8 to be like, mostly because I haven't been following along, except from a distance, haven't tried anything. So it was interesting to experience this. So there are some elements that I found similar and kind of what I expected in the past, and some things that were totally different. So specs, this shoe comes in at 10.58 ounces, i.e. 300 grams in a men's size 9. Women's weights were not provided. We'll try to figure those out. For my size 10, it came in at 12.7 ounce, which is not a light shoe by any means. It has a 6 millimeter drop per Inov-8. It was 25 millimeters in the heel, 19 in the forefoot, which it feels like there's a lot more material though than that. That supposedly was with the insole, but there's a lot of shoe here. This is a max cushion shoe. There's a lot of material underfoot. This shoe is meant for ultra marathon trail miles. It's meant for not muddy trails, but very technical advanced trails and long efforts. And as I discovered, you can actually use this on road if your mechanics are stable. So let's talk about the upper first. Upper was very interesting. It reminds me of what I expected from Inov-8. There's a lot of room here. There's a lot of volume. I don't have a narrow foot, but I had to cinch these laces down really tightly. I didn't lace lock the shoe, didn't have to, but had to really lock the midfoot down. And luckily with the overlays, it actually worked really well. My foot was pretty secure. There's a ton of room in the toe box. It was narrowed a little bit by this toe guard, which does put some pressure there. And it was a little bit annoying the first couple runs. And then I seemed to have gotten used to it. But no, I would not run sockless in this shoe. This is definitely not something. Does anybody see the cat's whiskers going there? Not a shoe I would run sockless in for multiple reasons. Also, the sock liner is a little bit rough. So wearing socks, you'll be totally fine. Done long runs in the shoe, had no problem. But yeah, it's definitely meant for socks. So there is a heel counter, and there's also a cat's tail in this video, which I'm just going to leave in there because I don't want to redo this. So there is a heel counter. It is somewhat flexible in here, not overly rigid. Didn't really have any problems with that. Does provide some structure because the heel is a little bit wide as well. And overall, again, the overlays actually on the medial and lateral side seem to do a good job of locking the foot in. So security is actually pretty good for the amount of volume in this shoe. So wide fit, high volume, but decent security, especially if you lock it down. Didn't really have any irritations outside of the toe guard, which will be protected for sure, but just know if you're sensitive to that, might push on your toes a little bit. Didn't have any issues doing long runs. So, you know, it is what it is. I don't have a ton of experience with really aggressive toe guards in trail shoes. I'm just getting into more aggressive trail shoes. So that's something, I guess, to get used to. The sole was interesting. I've never experienced a graphene enhanced sole. I think Bach has more information on this, is going to be posting, but this thing is huge. I thought it was going to be heavy, and it turns out it runs a lot lighter. So it's not a Zoom X or Piba foam, at least that I think, but it runs much light. It is subtly bouncy. It's not hard. It's not overly soft. It's kind of right in that middle place where it feels like it rolls you and bounces you along. There is a rocker to the sole. The heel bevel is nice, little posterior flare, but not bad. Not a ton of flexibility. This thing is broken a little bit more, but really there's some solid toe spring here, and this just rolls you along. So like other maximalist shoes, it feels pretty smooth when you're going. The best use of this shoe, it can handle road. This is my left side, so I have worn down the lugs a little bit at about 50, 60 miles here, but not bad for someone like myself. It can handle road. It's smooth enough that on firmer surfaces, it can do this. I'll talk about something that didn't work as well for me on road, but really shines on trails, especially technical and advanced trails. Why? Because grip is really good. It grips rocks really well. It grips gravel, dirt really well, especially steep climbs. There's plenty of cushion here for bombing hills. The adapter flex right here, which some of you saw me comment on my written review, it works really well on these trails where you're up and your foot needs to adjust, where you would normally roll your ankle, but it allows you to kind of torque and move the way you would without putting as much stress on, say, some of your ankle ligaments back here. That is where this works really well. I like bombing trails, aggressive stuff. It's very agile for the weight, and it really goes for a long period of time. Now, again, plenty of cushion and plenty of material here for running on road. More than half my miles in this shoe are actually done on the road, and it felt very comfortable, except for the adapter flex, which I'll get to in a second. So for those people that are doing like road trail stuff, perfect shoe if you want to do ultras. If you've got an ultra marathon where you know you're going to deal with some technical stuff, but then you're going to be on the road for a while, this is going to be your shoe if you have stable mechanics for the road. The adapter flex, like I said, does work well adapting your foot to different surfaces. It's saved me once or twice on some really aggressive rocks where I probably would have rolled my ankle, but didn't. On road, however, you have to realize that there's not a ton of joints in the midfoot. That's why I don't usually like people putting flex grooves here. Now, what's additional here is they actually put this in line with what's called the mid-tarsal joints. So when you put a flex groove here, there's no joint that's in that angle, right? So all the joints in the foot and ankle are not on a normal axis. And when I say a normal axis or plane of motion, I'm talking about front to back is sagittal plane, side to side is frontal plane. Splitting here is that rotational stuff is transverse plane. None of the foot and ankle joints are in those planes. They're all off axis, and they change depending on what foot position you're in. This happens to be right in line with one of the midfoot joints called the mid-tarsal joints. And while that's going to be good for somebody who has stiff feet and wants to get some motion there, for somebody like myself who has too much motion there, this can cause a problem on stable surfaces like road. So I did have an issue with this straining my Achilles a little bit. That's fine. But long miles in this with the flex group, this flex group here tends to push me right through and kind of over accentuate how much I pronate. Pronation is not bad. It's a normal motion. It's just when it kind of gets overdone and it's more than you're used to, can put some stress on different tissues like the Achilles tendon. So had a little flare up in this shoe. I'm not blaming this totally, but for those people that have excessive midfoot motion, this is probably not going to be the best shoe. For people that have really stiff feet, this actually might be a really good option to help facilitate you getting some motion there. You don't want overly stiff or overly mobile feet. You want them in the middle, but you do need to be able to pronate, especially the midfoot, during initial contact, especially like early mid stance, where you're landing and you're going here. That's how you shock absorb. So this shoe might help somebody who needs a little bit more of that. It's like an anti-pronation, like an anti-pronation thing. So it's something that's going to facilitate a little bit more of that. But people who already have too much motion there, be careful with this shoe. This is probably not going to be the best option for road. For trail, you might be okay with the amount of mobility there, because people with more mobility tend to do better on trails because you can adapt to different surfaces. But unfortunately, for that reason, that didn't work for me. So I have to keep this to trail only. Overall, it's very interesting, right? So I haven't usually seen flex group in this area. I think for some people, it's going to work well. For others, it's going to be a cautionary thing and probably not something you're going to use. For trail, this is great. I've loved bombing hills in this, climbing stuff, almost rolling my ankle, but not, and getting saved by this. So I'd encourage Inov-8 to look into this a little bit more and maybe see if there's a way that they can change the angle that doesn't maybe overemphasize that joint and maybe balances out with the foot a little bit more, but it does its job on trail, just not on road. But this isn't really a road shoe, despite the amount of road use I've done. It is really durable, right? Like for me to still have a lug lift after 50 to 60 miles is pretty impressive on my left side. So even with road use, this thing is going to last. The midsole hasn't degraded at all. It can really handle aggressive stuff well. These grooves right here, they're not flex screws, dig really deep. They do catch rocks. This thing catches rocks get stuck here, so be careful with gravel, but it's not that hard to stop and pick them out. And honestly, I didn't really notice on trails, and I'd go home and be like, oh, look how many of these things are stuck. I wouldn't feel it. The midsole is so thick. So I wouldn't worry about this. This is definitely a little bit more unique. People who might have stiff mechanics, but wanting an advanced ultra marathon trail shoe, very much going to be something to look into. I'm really impressed. This is not going to be a shoe that that's going to work extensively for me, but I think it's going to work for a lot of people. There are some stable elements to this shoe. There is sole flare, heel, forefoot stable. It's just that midfoot, it's over accentuating some motion. But overall, I'm very impressed. I really want to see more stuff from Inov-8. I am very happy that you guys were nice, guys and gals were nice to send this stuff over from over the pond there. It is cool. It is cool to see what people are doing. And the graphene enhanced stuff is really cool. It's a nice feeling midsole. I do have to admit, and I'm really impressed by how smooth and how subtly bouncy it feels despite the weight. So really good job, Inov-8. I think you're onto something, and I really want to see this develop further. And I'm curious to see more shoes from you. And yeah, I've been watching this for years. I watch all the other reviewers have these. I watch Inov-8 put stuff out, just haven't tried it. So I'm still excited to see that they're in the game, they're aggressive. And overall, outside of this thing, good job. So that's our review of the Inov-8 Trailfly Ultra G 300 Max trail shoe that can handle road if you've got stable mechanics. It's really an aggressive trail shoe that can handle a lot for a long distance. Good midsole material, bouncy, tons of room up here. If you got wide feet, if you need high volume, this is your shoe. And I'm excited to see what they keep doing. So hopefully this review is good enough that they send us more stuff. If not, yeah, that's how it goes. I didn't see that. So all a shout out to my cat who made a guest appearance with his tail in here. Keep running. Please check us out on all the social media channels. As always, Bach and our group are doing all kinds of things. We got Facebook, we got Instagram, we got LinkedIn, we got TikTok, we got all the things out there. So anytime you want to see information, learn something, maybe see some shoe reviews, we got a ton of cool stuff coming up too. As soon as I can get through all my PhD classes, finish. I've only got one major one, but there's always things that are popping up. So cool resources coming and more videos too. So keep an eye out, and we're excited to keep growing. Please comment below if you got any suggestions, if you have any comments. Have you tried this shoe? Curious to know what you think. I'm curious to know what most people think about the adapter flex. I think it's going to work well for some people, not so much for others. So yeah, it's Doctors Running, Matt here. Stay running, stay healthy, and we'll see you in the next video.